Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. We are going to get started in just a moment. We just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to join us before we begin the session. We have people joining us from across the country today, which is excellent. It's so nice to have all of you here. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's Charity Village webinar. My name is Mercedes, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Specialist with Charity Village. As we are gathering here on a virtual platform, it is important to acknowledge that each of us is joining this webinar from the ancestral or unceded lands of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people. As a settler on this land, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, which includes the Ojibwe of Fort William First Nation. For those who may be joining a Charity Village webinar for the first time, Charity Village is Canada's largest online job board for the nonprofit sector. In addition to our online job board, organizations can also post volunteer positions. So if you are looking for work or to recruit talent in the sector, Charity Village is a great place to start. We also have a ton of excellent resources for nonprofit professionals, including online courses, articles, fundraising tools, and free webinars like the one we are presenting today. Before we start today's webinar, I would like to quickly run through some housekeeping items. You may have noticed when you joined the webinar that you were automatically put on mute. Since we have hundreds of participants in today's session, it is important for us to minimize the amount of background noise so that everyone can clearly hear the presentation. But you can still ask questions and make comments using the question box at the bottom of the Zoom control panel. Look for that at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions as you think of them, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. You can also email your questions to webinars@charityvillage.com. If you happen to encounter any technical issues with the webinar, whether with viewing the presentation or with the audio, please let us know in the question box or by sending us an email. We will do our best to get any technical difficulties resolved as quickly as possible. But in a worst case scenario, please remember that we are recording today's webinar and we will send you the full recording by email tomorrow. So if you get called away or disconnected, you will still be able to view the full presentation. And with that, I would like to welcome our presenter for today, Megan Foster, a certified professional facilitator. Megan holds a master's in strategic organizational leadership and is the founder of Mosaic Engagement. Welcome, Megan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Mercedes, and thank you to the entire Charity Village team. I'm really looking forward to this. Some of you on this webinar today will remember we did a bit of a part one, although it's not imperative that you saw that, last year when we talked a lot about strategic planning. And the second half to that conversation that a lot of times organizations don't necessarily consider is the moving from strategy to action. So that's what we're coming today to discuss. I really look forward to answering and taking as many questions as I can. We also will do some follow-ups after, and we'll talk more about that as we go. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to participate, whether that is live today or if you're watching the recording back, hello to you as well. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why action plans matter. What is it that makes them so important, and why do we think it is that it's one of the biggest pieces that people forget, which then leads to struggles with achieving what you've set out in your strategic plan. We're also going to dive into the specific steps to create that action plan. So what do we actually have to do to make this happen? And then what are some other ideas that we might want to consider as we go forward through with our action planning? As you're thinking about this today, I'll invite you to, I know most people don't say this, but I'll invite you to, on the side, open up and take a look at your organization's strategic plan. Take a look at your organization's strategic vision. Have that top of mind as you're considering some of these steps. If your organization has an action plan, or you've got a working plan or an operational plan, pull that up and see if you can find some of these details in there as well. I'm always a proponent of making things real life as possible. So if you have those examples handy, that's always a good thing. You can also expect some engagement today. And so we will be asking you to answer some polls and provide some information about your own experience and your own feelings, anywhere that you're feeling you might be facing some barriers to creating that change. And then we can help with some supports after that. So Mercedes already did a beautiful job and of introducing and saying a little bit about who I am. I will add a little bit more as well for what is important to me. As the owner and founder of Mosaic Engagement, I am very passionate about the commitment to reconciliation, equity, and inclusion. We do have this listed in full on our website if you'd like to take a look at that. But further to that, I wanted to add, and you'll see this photo that's on the right side of your screen here. This was taken a few weeks ago in Brandon, Manitoba, Treaty 2 territory, traditional homelands of the Otchishikovan, Anishinaabe, and the Michif people. And this was on the on Orange Shirt Day. And it was the kickoff to our community's Orange Shirt Week and Truth and Reconciliation Week. And what was really striking was the opportunity that we had to have some local daycare children who came for the ceremony, I'll say, and then our deputy mayor just happened to on a whim invite the daycare children to help him raise the flag. And that's what you're seeing in this photo here. And it was a really emotional moment for me, and it really caught me, and I can feel my throat catching right now because we know that the reason for Orange Shirt Day leads directly to the oppressity and the residential school system that was most recently still in effect in 1996 here in Canada. And so the juxtaposition of that experience of children, you know, in 1996 and 100 years before that to today, where we see those children coming to help raise the flag, is such a great demonstration of the small steps we have taken. I also know there are so many more steps that we can take. So I invite you to consider where you are in your journey to reconciliation, equity, and inclusion, and see what you can do in your own particular role. And take a look locally, take a look nationally. If you aren't sure of your own traditional lands, where you are, where you grew up, where you are working, I invite you to visit native-land.ca and take a look there, and it can do lots for us all. I have already said, Mercedes already added, my name is Megan Foster. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the founder of Mosaic Engagement. At Mosaic Engagement, we are a facilitation firm. We are a small group of folks who work together to help and to bring. I'm just seeing a comment or question in the chat about my voice echoing. Sorry about that. I'll do my best to speak up, and hopefully that will carry on. Will not carry on. So at Mosaic Engagement, we are a facilitation firm that does work with very small nonprofits and businesses across the country. And our goal is to help people feel better together. We are on a mission, as it says here, to motivate organizations to harness your own expertise. We as facilitators contribute to the overall process and decision-making and coming to better decisions quickly. What we expect of you all is you are the experts of the content. We can help you come to a better decision. And we do that intentionally, and we do that using tools that are proven to come to consensus in really engaging and inclusionary ways. I am happy to chat further. I invite you to visit our website at mosaicengagement.ca as well. I've already referenced the chat box, or excuse me, the Q&A box. If you do have any other questions about anything along the way, please do add in the question and answer. We will do our best to address some of those throughout the conversation today. My team is also committing to provide answers to all of those questions later on. So if you have a question that didn't get answered during our time today, we will follow up with those in a couple of weeks and have some answers for you overall. So let's dive in. Why do action plans matter? Why am I passionate enough about this that I reached out to Charity Village to say, hey, we should do a part 2 on this strategic planning thing? More often than not, organizations get really excited. They come together, invest a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of decision-making, a lot of brain power to come up with what we're going to do at that 50,000 foot level. Where do we want to go big picture? What's happening in the next 4 to 5 years? And then we get excited, the momentum's there, we leave, I go home thinking, oh, that was so fantastic. I love that organization. I want to volunteer with them. I want to donate to them. I want to join them. I want to join their team. And then nothing happens. And I know that some of you have experienced that as well, that you maybe have been part of that, or you've seen that happen, you've received the plan, and then you're sitting there thinking, well, yeah, we said that 4 years ago. We said that 5 years ago. We've been saying that for 10 years. So what I think is one of the key pieces to the success of a strategic plan is bringing the plan from strategy to action. So from that 50,000-foot level, what are we doing at the ground level? What are we doing year one? What are we doing year two? Who's responsible for that? When is that going to happen? And how are we going to measure it? And how are we going to communicate this progress or lack of progress, if that's the case? Being clear on the direction and the priorities within that plan, absolutely figuring out who is going to be accountable for those actions, and making sure to improve and look at the resources we have available and how to best make those decisions with what we have available will absolutely lead to a higher chance of success for those outcomes of your strategic plan. When we talk about the action planning, we also really need to remember to be communicating that. Whether it's at the beginning of the action planning process where you start to bring in more of your team, maybe not the entire team was involved. And I say team, it could be staff, could be board, could be volunteers, could be key stakeholders in the organization. They may have been, a select few of those may have been involved in the strategic planning. The folks to involve in your action planning are the ones that are going to be doing the work. This isn't necessarily a governing board decision process. It is, though, a decision and a process for those that are doing the work to be involved in. A lot of times I will see organizations with the best of intentions not involve everybody for fear of, we don't want to bother them. They've already got so much on their plate, or, we know we have that big event coming up, so we'll do this, and then we'll present back to them what those action plans will look like. And that's a miss, because the ones that are doing the work will have that first-hand experience on what it takes to make things happen. They will know that if we make decision X, outcome F is more likely. Or they may say that, oh, absolutely, I know I have to do this, but you've listed all these things and that's actually not my role at all. So it's not something that is going to be a success. So the more clear you can be on who's involved and the more connected to the work, the better chance you will have that success of that outcome. So let's pause here, and you're seeing a QR code on your screen. I will invite you to either use your phones and scan that QR code, or you can take a look in the chat and click on that link. It will take both spots will take you to the same place. This is going to take you to what's called a Menti poll. So as people are opening up the Menti poll, I'll give a little shout out. I am not sponsored by any way, shape, or form by Menti. I just really love the tool. It's a tool that can capture and engage audiences. There are free versions, there are paid subscriptions as well, but it's a really great tool. So I am going to switch over to a different screen here so we can see some results. The question I am asking is, as I do this talking here, present, question I'm asking is, how confident are you in developing an action plan for your organization? So the screen that you're now seeing here are the live results as they're coming in. You can see the little 3.3 dot that's sort of hovering back and forth. As more voices are answering here, you'll see that number shifting and changing. I will also hover over that so we can see we can't see who answered. We can't see, well, Mercedes said or Megan said, but we can see those numbers. So right now it looks like we've got a wide range of comfort level and
Megan,
confidence
sorry
level.
to jump in here. We just can't see the poll on your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for interrupting that, Mercedes. I will stop my share and restart it. Thank you very much. How is that?
Perfect. We can see it now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. So as I was mentioning, without you being able to see, this visual is much easier to follow along. You'll see that 3.3, that is the average rating that we're seeing. As I hover over, you'll see that the specific numbers at each indicate what individual responses were. So again, Mentimeter is a great tool. I'm not sponsored by them, although maybe if Mentimeter is watching, feel free to shout it out. But this is a great opportunity. So what we're seeing here is that people are kind of feeling that middle of the road. We have some folks that have higher confidence levels and some that are not quite confident yet. I'm hoping by the next end of the next 45 minutes, you will feel much more confident with that. So thank you very much for taking a moment to engage there. I will stop share and come back to the presentation here to Now that I've learned I can't just flip, I will do a new share and jump back in. So as you're thinking about that comfort level, I wonder too if some of that has to do with how much experience you've had directly involved with developing these action plans. And action plans can be as detailed or as simplistic as you'd like. Some organizations that we've worked with have had software that they use that identifies something like a ClickUp or a Mondays or Asana that really dives deep, and it gives you calendar reminders, and you can track progress, and you can do all kinds of fantastic things. Other organizations at the other end of the spectrum have used Word docs, and they, create a table and a list, and we identify these are the actions for year one, these are the actions for year two, here's who's doing what. And so there's no right or wrong with how detailed it has to be. The only thing that it has to be is usable and accessible. So it's important for your organization to decide what the best tool might be as you start to embark on this. Before we dive into the steps, I also want to add, we are at Mosaic Engagement, we are contributors to this space. We are facilitators. We do this, day in and day out. And we have language that we use that describes pieces of the plan. If you're hearing some different words, I'll flip to the next screen here to see those overall steps. If you're hearing me use different words than you maybe have used before, or, hey, where does this fit in? We talk a lot about tactics. We talk a lot about measurables. Where does that fit in? Please feel free to pop that in the chat, in the question and answer, and I'm happy to do that. I also invite you to consider, oh yeah, okay, we've called this, tangibles or these metrics before. Now I'm seeing that this could be another option. So certainly lots of different ways to do this. Again, the most important way to do it is the way that works for you, and to at least do it. So step number one, we start with a clear vision. We're going to go more into detail about each of these different steps shortly. Step number one, starting with that clear vision. Again, that will be your strategic vision. That's part of your strategic plan. It may be your organizational vision, or your organization may not have a vision yet. So if that's the case, I encourage you to develop that. Identify SMART goals. So what is it that we specifically want to do and measure, and so on and so forth? Assign those responsibilities. Who's going to do what? Set realistic timelines. So we know our strategic plan is, 3 to 5 years in the future, maybe longer, maybe less. What are we going to do at this specific moment? So we'll get shorter in those timeframes. And then the importance of reviewing and adjusting and analyzing as you go. So a little bit more into detail of each of these pieces. Starting with that clear vision, we want defined long-term goals or outcomes. What do we actually want to achieve over the next 4 years? We want to make sure that these action plans align with the organizational or the project mission. And what's an important difference here that I haven't mentioned yet is that action plans don't have to be just from that strategic level. They might be an action plan for anti-racism within your organization. Maybe it's an action plan to take a look at the fundraising goals. It could be a smaller subset of something that you've got within your organization already. And you want to make sure that all the team members involved understand that vision and can communicate it. Gone are the days of 3 and 6 paragraph long vision statements. Vision statements need to be very clear, concise. You want them to be aspirational. You may never achieve this vision. We want it to be so far in the future, you may never achieve it. And we want them to be emotion evoking. So we want it to be powerful. We recently worked with an organization who chose to start their vision statement with, "We dream of a future where, da, 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 da." And I just thought that is a real grabber. I loved that starting to that. So making sure you've got that clear vision and you are ready to go. Next, you are going to identify those SMART goals. So we know where we're trying to reach with that vision statement. What are those clear objectives or different steps to get us to that end goal? M in SMART stands for measurables. So how are we going to know if we're making progress? Of all these things, I would say that the metrics are the piece that people forget about, or are either nervous or scared, or it's just not top of mind to revisit. I love data. I'm a fan of data. I also am a very visual person. I actually have a graphic right beside me that is tracking some metrics of ours, but it's not a spreadsheet. It is a child's thermometer for fundraising because I like to look and just see, oh yeah, that's great. So I add that, it makes it a little fun, but it's still measuring. It's still a metric. So it doesn't have to necessarily be data and analytics and logic and software. It could just simply be, how many have we done? We said we were going to do 5 by this time. We've done 4. Great, we need to do 1 more. So it can be as simple as that. Achievable. Make sure that these goals are realistic within your available resources. One exercise that I like to do or activity that I like to do with my organizations is I first have a magic wand and I grant you all the money, all the volunteers, all the board support. You could have a private jet if you wanted. Oh, and the volunteers, they are effective volunteers. They're knowledgeable, they're reliable, they're responsible, they're fun, they get along. You can have all that, sunshine and rainbows land. What would you do? So we have a bit of a brainstorming. We come up with some great big, bold blue sky ideas. And then unfortunately, I have to take my magic wand away and we look at those big, bold ideas. And now with our current resources available, what could we do that is a step toward that big, bold idea? And that's where we live in that realistic lens. But it's important to think big because there's always something we can do. There's always something available to us that's going to shift us and change and move us toward that next step that we want to get to. Relevant. So these must align with the broader vision. So when we get to the action planning level and we're starting to identify the goals and objectives to get us there, I will often work with organizations to look at what we are currently doing. So what are those things in our, whether it's your budget items, or maybe it's programs and services that you're offering, do they align with our vision? Sometimes they don't. And if you have recently changed, or if you want to change that strategic vision that you're heading toward, it's important to look at where you are now, what you're offering, and what might need to be sunset. What might have already had its day in the sun and can move us forward. You may have to let go or rethink or revitalize those programs if they no longer align with that vision. And then finally, time bound. You got to set deadlines. When are these things going to happen? This, along with the metrics, could feel a little nervous. You might have a big, bold vision and say, we are going to have, I'll do a real big one. I'm going on a limb here. We are going to have abuse-free sport by 2050. That's a big long-term vision. Deadlines for that, we've set a target of 2050. What do we need to do each year until then to get there? We wouldn't map out 50 years of an action plan or 25 years of an action plan, but we might map out the next 5. So if we don't have that big goal with that deadline and we don't have those deadlines along the way, those years are going to fly by and you're going to have us back to help with your strategic plan. And you're going to say, we really didn't do much on this since you left. And we don't want to hear that. We want to hear, oh, Megan, it was so great. We left, we set our goals, we set our timelines, and we've advanced so quickly along this plan. That's what we want to hear. Next, you are going to assign responsibilities. So who is responsible for what? One tool that we really love to do and to work with organizations is called the RACI framework. You might be familiar with this already. R stands for responsible. Who is it that is going to do the work? Who's taking the lead? Who is going to initiate those things? A, accountable. Who is accountable if this doesn't happen? Who is going to follow up with the lead folks, the responsible folks, to make sure it's happening and going on? C for consulted. Who needs to be informed, who needs to provide input and feedback, or who could give some ideas? Maybe there's a neighboring organization, or maybe you're a provincial body and there's another provincial body that you could connect with and say, hey, we're thinking about this, or we saw you had that really fantastic program. We want to try that here. What can you tell us about it? That's your consultation. And then I, who is at that FYI level only? They're not involved in the weeds, but they need to be reported to. This might be supervisors, this might be other departments, it might be your board, whoever that is. Who do we stay informed with? And when do we inform them? Is it a quarterly update? Is it annually at our AGM? We're going to report back to our stakeholders. When is that reporting happening? When we talk about the RACI framework, this may change over time. And it's important to keep this document updated as you go. So I don't mean to say you need to be in there daily, but you do need to make checkpoints when you're going to update things, particularly that RACI. We know that there's a lot of turnover. There's turnover with volunteers, there's turnover with staff, there's department changes, workflows might change a little bit. So what does that look like for your organization? And does our RACI framework still reflect who is there? Setting realistic timelines. So we talked about this a little bit already, but the idea with those timelines is to make sure that you are visiting those and that you have it in your calendar. One organization that I was working with actually added a standing item to all of their board meetings for an update on the strategic plan. And then following board meetings, they've got standing staff meetings. They added an item in the agenda for the staff meeting on updating your action plan. So it's not I'm not going to sit in a meeting and read out my spreadsheet of what I've done all day, but it's more of a, yep, we've got the venue booked for that event. We know registration is going to start here. We hit a little rough patch with the registration link because something wasn't working. So we're working on that. It's delayed a little bit, but we expect to have it going by this day. So just a quick snapshot, high level. It could also be done asynchronously. It doesn't necessarily have to be that face-to-face meeting, but you want to make sure that your timelines are keeping you on track. When we talk about factoring in dependencies and external variables, that's one of those things that I just mentioned there that, the registration link doesn't work. So we have to work with our IT or with whoever is running the software. When you build those in, it allows for that accountability to stay top of mind. So I know that I'm the responsible lead and I need to make sure that I'm the one that's going to check in. We also know things don't always go as planned. So if we're checking in, we see some of those things maybe go off track or maybe they're delayed a little bit. We still have time to course correct. We still have time to say, you know what, hey, that didn't work as we thought, or we ran into something and we had to shift it. We still have time to do that rather than at the end of the year or the end of the 4-year strategic plan. Oh, shoot. Yeah, we knew that was not going to happen, but we just kind of let it go. We can be nimble. We can do that. I also like to think about the positive end of the spectrum, where when things are going well and you're gaining traction and gaining momentum, you might actually finish up and achieve things earlier than planned. Celebrate that, first of all, exciting, yay. Second of all, what is it that we could do next? Is there a part 2 to this, or are we waiting and now we're going to move on to our next strategic piece? I often say that strategic plans, once they're set, they are set. Action plans, they should be flexible and they should continue to be ongoing and a living document regularly. So I feel like I've talked about this already. Excuse me, I just have to have a tickle in my. But it's important to keep reviewing and keep adjusting this. This is a very different example I'm going to give. I was just recently attended a panel event for women in business. And one of the questions came up about debt. And one of the experts on the panel suggested that sometimes people feel afraid of debt or shameful that they have debt. And so they don't want to talk about it. And then they don't make a plan. And then their financial advisor doesn't really know all the details. That's kind of how I feel about reviewing and adjusting. If something has gone off track or you haven't started or competing priorities took you away and you weren't able to focus as best you hoped, that doesn't mean you need to be afraid or feel shame about that. It's best to talk about it and bring it up. And you know what? Maybe your coworker or your colleague can help you out. Or maybe you have an opportunity to rethink it. Or you might just say like, oh, yes, we know that was supposed to be a priority and these other things came up. We're going to have to park that. When we do updates with organizations, it can be as simple as a traffic light. Red, nope, hasn't started yet or is delayed. Yellow, yeah, it's proceeding as expected. Or green, yeah, we have accomplished this. You could also go more in depth about more information, depending on the audience. But it's important that you are reporting that and that you are reviewing that, whether it's within your team, organization-wide, with the board, or with your stakeholders at something such as an AGM, as I mentioned. The more specific data you can get and the more opportunity you can get for feedback, and by that, it could be feedback from the staff doing the work, or it could be feedback from the members or the clients or the participants of the program, that will help you to improve. And I know that we do a lot of work in social services within the nonprofit industry. So I don't mean to say that if a program has, 5 participants coming, oh, no, that's a fail. We don't want to do that. Let's go to the one that's got 50 people. For those 5, that might be life-changing work, and that's okay. It's just a matter of using that data to help us to deliver better work. So maybe those 5, maybe you would get 6 if you moved the session a half an hour earlier so that people can leave to go pick up their children from school. You know, that those kinds of details and information can be really, really helpful. I attended a meeting, and the woman that was hosting the meeting opened up with some housekeeping details, and she just asked, you know, today is a professional development day from school. Did that affect anyone's ability to come today? And the reason she was asking was because there was another professional development day on a future meeting. Our future meeting was on a professional development day. And I just thought that's great feedback, instant feedback. And the joke in the crowd was, well, maybe you should ask the people who aren't here. But it was something that she noticed. Oh, we've got 2 meeting days on no school days. How does that affect our audience? And so just checking in and seeing, is this working for us? So it can be a really great tool. So I'm going to pause here again, and I'll invite you to go back to your Menti. And the question we're asking this time is, of those different steps of the plan, and I'll just switch my screen here again to show you some results. Of those steps of the plan, which do you feel might be the most challenging? And based on the responses, oh, sorry, I missed one, I think maybe. Tell me, let's see what question that is. Mercedes, would you mind just telling me what question that one is? Because I am seeing a different one on my screen. I might have missed one.
Yes, so I actually only see let's engage on the screen.
Okay.
I see here it says, does your organization have, and then the following are vision statement, a current strategic plan, and an action or operational plan as the options. And then there's a selection of no and yes for each end of the spectrum.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Sorry, everybody. I caught myself off guard there. So first question we're going to ask here, as you see, do you have these pieces? No on the far left, yes on the far right, and then in the middle is a I'm not sure. So we'll see what those are, because it's important that we have those vision statements to help us guide this. Now, again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, action plans overall that we're talking about today are mostly relate to the strategic plan. What we also can do is action plans for smaller portions of that. So this question does help to identify for you where these things, where you may want to build up, and then what could be helpful going forward as you develop that action plan. So as we're waiting a couple more seconds here, Mercedes, are there any questions that have come through the question box that I might be able to answer?
Yes, so the first question, how do we communicate back to the board? We have tried various methods, and every time it seems the board is not happy with such method. Are there any best practices or templates that you could please share?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to give you a very facilitated answer and say it depends. And I'm fully aware that's sometimes not a helpful answer, but in this case, it really does. So when we hear that there is that the board isn't, either the board is saying, well, we didn't know that, or we haven't heard anything, or, you know, that sort of stuff. To me, that is a bit of a disconnect in that communication. The other piece is that sometimes the board itself, because it's made up of multiple people, the individuals will have different ways that they prefer to receive information. So sometimes the vocal few will say, well, I didn't get that, when in fact they, you know, maybe prefer a phone call compared to email, and they've had it emailed to them plenty of times. So I just say that as a bit of a side. My suggestion, and you may have done this already, is to ask the board and to work with the board to identify what information do you want to be reported on, and how do you want it reported? Do you want it in a verbal report at the board meetings? Do you want it recorded and sent out before the board meetings? Do you want it as a document? You know, how do you want it? And when? How often do you want to know about this? Those 3 questions can really help to identify the best way to share information specifically to the board. I would suggest having a formal is maybe not the right word, but a specific or dedicated conversation about those things to make sure that you are responding and helping the board to understand what it is they want as a collective, and then you'll be able to report back. So looking at this Menti, it looks like lots of people have the vision statement and the strategic plan, and then not as many have that action or operational plan. I should have had another question that asked how often do you check in on your action plan and your strategic plan, but that'll be for another webinar. Sticking with our Menti here, I am now going to ask you about your biggest barriers, or what are the biggest challenges. So when you take a look at this list, we talked a little bit about these different things in some ways or another. Specific to these barriers, what are those biggest barriers for you in developing your action plan? What we will do here is, once we see what these responses look like, we will then, whatever the number one challenge is in developing the action plans and moving from strategy to action, my team and I, we are going to put together a resource document for you. So this will be in a follow-up email from us directly later on, probably in the next week or two. My team is watching, they're going to say, holy smokes, but it'll be just fine. We can do it. So of these 5 different barriers or common barriers, what do you feel like the most challenging for you in your experience? This is a different type of question. So if you're answering on your phone, you can click with your finger and drag into the order of challenge, number 1 to number 5. If you're answering on a computer, you'll have some arrows that you can drop them down and put them in order before you hit submit. And please remember to hit submit, otherwise it doesn't register your answer. So as we're watching these, Mercedes, is there another question that I could answer so we don't hear those uncomfortable crickets of silence?
Yes, so we have another question asking if you could please state the difference between an operations plan and a strategic plan.
Yeah, great question. Great question. All the questions are great. I shouldn't single that out. So with the strategic plan, that is really high level, very strategy focused. What direction do we want the organization to go in the future? Strategic plans often include your vision, mission, and values as an organization, what we call the outcomes, or the what we want to achieve over the next 4 to 5 years, and the initiatives. How are we going to achieve those things? So when we talk about those 4 components, vision, mission, values, oh, and excuse me, I forgot about the strategic priorities. So we've got our vision, mission, values, the strategic priorities or strategic directions. What are those areas of focus that we want to focus on to move forward with our organization? And then what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it. That is the strategic level. So what we're seeing as well trending lately, and I say trending kind of loosely, but over the last few cycles of strategic plans, we're seeing that more organizations are going to those high-level strategies, not including metrics, so no numbers, no percentages. For example, we might say we want to increase the number of participants in our program, this specific program. Great. What we don't see in a strategic plan is we want to increase the number of participants by 10% in our program, or we want to see 25% reduction in turnover of our volunteer base. So those examples I just gave live in the action plan. So strategy is long-term, big picture, forward thinking for the organization, typically 3 to 5 years. We don't go less than 3 years with a strategic plan. We sometimes go more than 5 years in special cases, but usually that sweet spot is somewhere between 3 to 5 years. Action planning is more specific. So it's what are we do? We know we want to go there here in the strategic plan. In our action plan, what are we doing year 1? What are we doing year 2? What are we doing quarter 1 of year 1? Who's responsible for that? How many people do we want to increase by? What is the number that we want to decrease by? So that's where all those strategies and those tactics and measures live, is in the action plan. The strategic plan, once it's formally approved by the organization, it stays put for the most part during the duration of the plan. The action plan should be a living document. It should be something that you, or operational plan, should be something that you check in with regularly and keep it top of mind. So I'm seeing our responses have slowed down here on our question. So it looks like resource constraints. So you all want my magic wand, don't you? With the budget, you can have all the budget, you can have all the volunteers. So resource constraints is showing up as the most challenging to overcome. So what we'll do is we'll give some thought to that, and we will draw on the expertise of the organizations we've worked with, and we'll put together a follow-up for you based around how you may be able to rethink some of those resource constraints. Yay, look forward to it. So I'm going to stop share again, and I'll jump back to our presentation, and we will carry on. Right. Thank you for bearing with me as I jump from screen to screen, everybody. So a few other additional considerations that you might want to think about when you're action planning. We talked a little bit about this as well, but who should be involved? So when we're doing the action planning, when I say who should be involved, I don't necessarily mean who's involved in doing the work. I mean more who should be involved in making the plan. So where at the strategic level, you may have your executive director, depending on the size of the organization, of course. You may have your executive director and your senior leadership team, or your CEO and your senior leadership, and some board members. Sometimes the board itself develops the strategic plan and then hands it over to their staff to develop the action plan. If you are an organization that doesn't have paid staff, or you've got a part-time ED, who essentially manages the office, you may then want to consider who are your volunteers that are most impacted by the decisions you make. Do you have those long-standing volunteers who reach out or are there, year over year, and they're the ones that are setting up the events and collecting the registrations, and they're helping out? That would be a really great voice to participate in the action planning, because they know they will have ideas and solutions themselves as well. If it feels like a big undertaking to bring everybody together and have a full day, and as we sometimes do, you could do things like this via survey, or you could just have a phone call. You could meet someone for coffee. Hey, what do you think about this? What makes sense? It doesn't necessarily have to be that big formal event. It could be, and it could be helpful. You may want to do a combination of the two things. So you may want to send out your what you're going to achieve in your strategic plan, your outcomes and your initiatives, and say, hey, what do you think is a priority from your perspective? And decide what the priority list looks like. And then that's the piece that you're going to action out first. I just was working with an organization yesterday, and we took some painter's tape right across the wall and divided it up year by year. And then we just put up their outcomes on cards and their initiatives, and we just mapped it out on the wall, took a picture of it, and then pulled that into a document. And that got sent out to their stakeholders of, okay, this is what we've mapped out. Here's what we know. The other consideration that you might want to make is what type of tool is helpful to capture all of this information. So when we talk about different tools, I mentioned some softwares. What you'll want to decide first is what information are you going to include? We are going to include our outcomes. We are going to include a RACI chart for who's responsible. We're going to include specific actions or tasks. First we have to get an RFP. First, we're going to apply for grants. Then we're going to put out an RFP for the work. Then we're going to review the submissions. Then we're going to host make our selection. Then we're going to implement the project. So those are the tasks involved. And then again, breaking it up year by year. What are we going to do? And then adding in those measurables. So that might be what your template looks like. Some organizations have used spreadsheets that have links to different things. We build up, here's our strategic plan, here's all the information on a spreadsheet. This is the tab for this department, this is the tab for this department. So there's lots of different ways that you could capture the data. It's important to consider first what you want to capture and then how you're going to do that. So you can keep those things in mind. After saying all of that, I want to pause and say it also doesn't have to be so complex. It can simply be, here's what we want to achieve, here's how we're going to do it, here's who's responsible, this is when we're going to check in and see an update. Something as simple as that check-in date, then gives you an opportunity to revisit that work each time. It's kind of like having a trainer at the gym. Yes, I know I could go for a run on my own. Yes, I could do some sit-ups and push-ups, no problem. But when I know I've got to meet Donnie at the gym, definitely I'm going to make sure I do my sit-ups first because I have that meeting coming. So it's a bit of that accountability piece. I was working with an organization recently, and we were doing it virtually. We do lots of work virtually as well. And it can be fun, I promise. Virtual can be engaging. I know people are tired and sometimes zoomed out, although I'm sure you're all very engaged right now. And so they came back from breakout room, and one of their board members said, Megan, that was hard. Those were some detailed questions you were asking. And I said, I know. And so, we talked about things and talked about a little bit of what they were discussing in their breakout room and ironed out a few things. And I said, okay, great. Back to your breakout rooms. Let's do a little bit more. So they went back to their breakout rooms and came back. And she said, that was still hard, but I'm glad we did it because now we have our plan set. So as long as you can carve out that time to keep things on track, set your goals, set your deadlines, when we're going to revisit, who we're going to update, you will be way ahead of the game. I'd love to pause here, Mercedes, for another question or two if you've got some.
Yes, so this one's a bit longer. However, I believe this question applies to many organizations in the nonprofit sector. This
Yeah.
individual noted that they currently use SMART goals and RACI charts for their yearly operational plans. However, they have struggled implementing longer term strategic plans. Their major difficulty lies in planning for the unknown. So many of their projects are standalones or developed in response to new situations. So they're trying to plan for something new each time. Could you offer any suggestions for planning when organizations know the destination yet cannot plan for each project specifically?
Yeah, that's a really, really important point to make is the unknown. And in the nonprofit world, we rely on so many things that are out of our control. And it's so important to be able to acknowledge that. So thank you very much for asking that question. One thing that that's coming to mind right now is to look back at the data. Again, I'm going back to my data because that can really tell us a great picture. So you in this particular question in this scenario, that destination is known. We know where we want to go. We've got that vision statement, but we're constantly getting hit by these curveballs, and we're not exactly sure how to get there. So by taking a pause and doing a real clear look at where we were, where we've come from, and I'll use an example of fundraising. Maybe it's a fundraising plan that you're doing. Looking back over the last, I'm going to say since the pandemic, because we know the pandemic was just such a game changer beyond anyone's imagination. So if we say since the pandemic, or if your organization has information from before, that might be relevant as well. But more than just 1 year back is what I'm saying. And identify from each of your revenue streams, if we're talking just fundraising, what came in, how much did things cost? Then what was our cost to raise $1? What was that return on investment? If you've got numbers of participants or donors, things like that, all of those information pieces can tell us a story. So sometimes I hear with organizations that, oh yeah, you know what, we're having a really, really hard year and we don't know where our donors are. We haven't, donations are down. And you look, but then if you look over time, you're actually still up. You just had a little blip this year. That tells a different story than like, oh, you know what, we have never had a better year. We are seeing so many dollars come in the door, but then you look back over a few years and you're actually quite a bit lower than what you were before. So even though it feels more, the data can tell a different story. So taking a look at that, you may be able to identify some themes. You might not know the specifics, but you might expect that, oh yeah, we know we're going to see a pickup after the national office runs this campaign. We know we don't know what, but we're going to see some sort of blip. Or on the other end of the spectrum, I'll say, you know what, we live in a small community and we're hosting the World Curling Championships. So we know our donors are going to have their dollars stretched because they're supporting that event this year. They're maybe not able to do this year. So you can start to look at those types of themes and start to plan more for the themes or the more open or broad ideas, and then be ready to be nimble on the how. I would also suggest that you really do take a look at your data and your specifics and your numbers and your measures regularly to see, because you may actually not, you may be looking at one line but not accounting for other areas. I know I'm using general terms, so it's maybe not landing quite as I hoped in my head, but the more you look at that data that you have, the more you can then plan for those general ideas and then be nimble and prepared to weave and ebb and flow depending on what those actualities are when they come into effect. And please measure and check in and analyze as you go. So I'll take a little moment as well to talk about the role of a facilitator in all this. So as facilitators, we are there to help guide the process and guide the discussion and the questions. We are not the content experts. Different from that would be consultants. So consultants come in with that knowledge and that expertise of the specific topic. As facilitators, we may have experience in that, but we aren't going to tell you and say, here's what you should do with a report. We will pull that information from you and put together a report that your team has shared with us. What's interesting about working with a facilitator as well is that we can hear from multiple parts of the organization, and we don't have any background knowledge specific to that. So we're able to identify, oh, you know what, I'm hearing a lot of this, but nobody's actually voiced it here. Oh yeah, that's right. You know, we kind of forgot about that. So we can help to bring in some of those unseen areas and biases. We also are skilled at ensuring everybody's voice is heard at some point. So there may be different opportunities at different points in the process to bring in different voices and making sure that that all areas of the organization have been involved. I don't necessarily mean that everybody's going to be at the planning table that day, but we're going to do our best to pull in the different voices and make sure we're identifying those themes and bringing everybody together. One of the other value adds to having a facilitator is that you can take it out of your brain. We will absorb that. I worked with an organization who puts on annual conferences every year as community consultations, and then a different organization that they're a granting organization. They offer grants to everybody. So they wanted to bring together the people that used their grants and were recipients to share success stories. So they've done this in different ways, but this year, this past spring, they invited me to come in and help facilitate the session. And one of the organizers came in and she said, I didn't even pack tape today. I feel great, because she was able to just show up and participate. She didn't have to have an eye on the clock. She didn't have to remember to send out the this and the that. She didn't have to pack the tape and the scissors. We did all that. So we're able to come in with the fresh eye. It is top of mind for us rather than a side of a desk project for those of you that are doing so many things. We know that in small and very small nonprofits, you are the ones who are, you know, meeting the locksmith because the back door doesn't lock properly. You're also plunging the toilet upstairs. You also are running the program tonight. And oh, by the way, you need to do an operational plan for your staff, or your board's asking for a strategic plan. What the heck am I supposed to do there? So we at Mosaic have a number of different supports that we can offer. We work with, like I say, variety of size of organizations right across the country. We do in-person, we do virtual. We have facilitators that speak French. I do not, however, I have colleagues that do. So we do bilingual sessions as well. And we love the work that we do. We love to be in the room when the awesome things are happening. And I'm still figuring out a way that I can bring organizations together to share those awesome things, because I think that'll be a game changer. We get to see it, but I want you all to see it. I want you all to talk to one another. And I know Charity Village does awesome things like this webinar, as well as the conference where some of those ideas are shared and happening. So stay tuned for that. So a few key takeaways for you today. When we talk about action planning, we want to make sure that you're offering that structure and that clarity and bringing that strategic plan to the ground level. What are we actually doing? What are the tasks? What are the actions? What are the order we need to do this in? When are we doing it? Who's going to be responsible? When are we going to check in? Please add those tangibles and measures, and make sure that those reviews are happening. Whether it's a verbal update or a check-in, get that on your standing agendas and make that a priority for you. I would love to work with you all. We have a number of different services available, as I said, ranging from to meet all budget points. And I like to say we're an accordion, that we will ebb and flow to what your project might need or how we can support. We've got a couple of minutes here, Mercedes, for maybe one or two more questions.
Yes, thank you, Megan. So the first question, will you please explain the difference in goals between the strategic and the action plan?
Yeah, great question. I love this question because we use words interchangeably, and a different facilitator might use different language than we use. A consultant might use a different word yet. So I can appreciate that there's lots of jargon floating around. When we talk strategic plans, we actually don't use the goals as a word necessarily, mostly because people often jump to the SMART goal. So when we're talking strategic plan, that high level, 3 to 5 years in the future, big picture, that we talk about outcomes. What do we want to achieve? And initiatives. How do we want to achieve that? When we talk then operation or action planning, we talk about the SMART goals at that stage, because we want them to be very specific. We want the numbers, we want the metrics, we want the measures, we want the timeline. So when we talk action plans, we do use that SMART goals and the word goals. When we talk strategic planning, we tend to leave out the word goal because we don't want it to be that specific. I'll use a civic example or civil example. They might want to say, make roads or, safer roads for our community. That might be the outcome of the plan 5 years in the future. And then how they're going to do it might be, do some look at the data and see where the hotspots are for accidents, increase number of, I'm just making this up, I'm not a civil worker, increase, put in a traffic circle instead of a stop sign, or put a stop sign in, or reduce the speed zone of a certain certain neighborhood. That might be there. The action level then gets into the nitty gritty, that here's specifically, we're doing this neighborhood first. We're going to put in this from this block to this block. We're going to add this traffic light. It's going to cost this much money. This is the department taking the lead. This is how we'll know, or this is when we expect it to be done. Here's our contingency for delays. So all those details fit in that operational level.
Thank you, Megan. And then the next question, how does an RACI framework work when there's only one employee who is the executive director?
Oh, that's an easy one. Your name's on every single letter. No, I'm just kidding. So that is a really solid example and great point. When we talk about the RACI, the executive director, in this case, the singular staff, you might be that person that is responsible for carrying that out. Then in that case, your board or whoever the executive director reports to would be that accountability piece. So they are the ones that will be overseeing to make sure that this happens. The consulted or informed might be organizations in your neighborhood, or it might be your stakeholders. Maybe it's the people using the program or accessing the services. They might be consulted to say, hey, how's it going? What do you wish we offered that we didn't? Those types of consultations. And then the informed might be the organization broadly. Maybe you're going to put it in your newsletter or a social media post to say, this is what we're working on, keep us accountable, help us, give us some feedback. That might be the level of informed that you offer. In that case also, you may also inform the board as a whole. So it might be someone that you report, might be something you report on and inform the board. They don't want to know your nitty gritty, but they'll want to know the progress overall.
Thank you for presenting such an informative webinar, Megan. Do you happen to have any final comments before we sign off today?
This was really great. I'm showing now, and you'll see I love my QR codes. Please go ahead and scan this if you would like a copy of these slides. We will share those with you right away. And these are also available in the recording. The slides will be shared with Charity Village as well, I believe. And I'd love for you to connect with me. We primarily use LinkedIn and Instagram. So those are the two codes you're seeing there. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone would like to reach out as well. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Megan. I just wanted to remind everyone that you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the webinar recording. Please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. You should see a survey link pop up right here in Zoom following the session as well. On behalf of Charity Village, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll join us for our next free webinar, Preparing Your Nonprofit's Finances for 2025, A Roadmap to Success. You can find more information on this and all of our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.